Dasan McCullough is moving inside. Who needs to be better in 2024 for the Oklahoma Sooners to contend? We'll discuss on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on X at Josh on Ref. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KREF Sports app. And Josh, with all of the spring ball buzz coming out of the Everest Center with practices and whatnot happening, one of the big nuggets was Dasan McCullough is moving inside to play will linebacker for the Oklahoma Sooners after spending the 2023 season playing cheetah. And then in 2022 with the Indiana Hoosiers, he played defensive end, edge rusher, whatever you want to call it. So this is his third position change in as many years. And back in high school, he was a safety. So the dude has gone through a lot of transition over the last 3-4 years. Could this be the spot that clicks the best for him?
It could, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And he has had an adventurous football career, which high school to college, not unusual to see a position change there, but to basically have started out as an edge guy, then to come to Oklahoma and essentially do what you were doing in high school a little bit and play a little safety / linebacker hybrid at the cheetah. But for Oklahoma's intents and purposes, I mean, really it feels like a lot of times more of a coverage type role, more of a coverage type chess piece, and now all of a sudden you're back at linebacker. So yeah, he's had an adventurous career already just in college alone, and obviously the injury concerns that he had at the end of last year. He had a January surgery to address the meniscus injury, and went back home to Indiana to do just that, to try and take care of some of that issue that he had with the meniscus and then tendonitis in his right knee. So if he's healthy and ready to roll, then I think that alone makes Dasan McCullough a better player in 2024. Seemed like maybe he just kind of had the nagging injury bug, in addition to the fact that maybe he was not at the ideal position, and time will show on that front.
I mean, that cheetah spot, it's going to be tough. You know, you have so many different responsibilities and roles that you have to play, you know, not just coverage, not just run defender, not just pass rusher. You have to be able to play all of them at the same time. And, you know, it's a bit of a transition for everybody. And I think we've seen how, okay, year one in the program with Brent Venables, it might be a bit of a rocky road for a lot of guys, but then year two, things start to click a little bit better. So I think this could be beneficial for him, as we saw in the Texas goal line stand. I mean, the guy is really, really good playing at and around the line of scrimmage. I mean, he does a great job playing with leverage and taking on blockers and setting the edge. So if he's playing your weak side linebacker spot, you're not going to be concerned about him getting, you know, washed out in the run game. You're not going to have to be concerned about him, you know, taking on, you know, 320-pound offensive linemen, because he has already shown and displayed that ability to kind of take on those guys and hold up and be where he's supposed to be in the run fit. So I'm excited about that. But the thing I'm most excited about, and this is what Dasan is kind of excited about, is what he's going to be able to do potentially as a rusher. Here's what he had to say when he met with the media. He said, "I love it. I feel natural playing will. You know, I get a lot of opportunities to show my rushing skills and to be able to rush the passer and be man on tight ends, be able to show really who I am as a complete player. I feel like Will gives me a good chance to do that." You know, and going into last year, it could have just been, hey, you know what? We got Danny, we got Jaron and Kip. Maybe playing cheetah is going to be the spot that allows us to get him on the field. Now, you still have all that depth at linebacker, but I mean, they're going to give him an opportunity to play Will. And I do think that it could be a benefit to him. Now he's going to have to go and earn those snaps, and he's going to have to, outperform, different guys. And I'll be curious what this means for a guy like Danny Stutzman too, because Danny Stutzman played Will for you last year. Is he moving to a more traditional Mike linebacker where I think most people would maybe think he might fit best? What do you think about that, Josh? Do you think he's making a move as well, or that Dasan is maybe backing up Danny Stutzman at Will?
That's a good question. I guess the natural thought would be that he's backing up Danny Stutzman, because I just can't imagine that you would, you say that probably Danny Stutzman could play either, Sam or Will, and any backer position he'd probably be great at. But I kind of feel like your best player, you don't necessarily want to be moving around a bunch, that maybe he's kind of locked in where he's at. But, you find out, can McCullough go play for you there? And then if he does, maybe he moves into one of the other backer roles for Oklahoma. At the bare minimum, I think this clearly changes things, not necessarily for Danny Stutzman, but for Kanik, for Kip Lewis, for Kobe McKenzie. I mean, for those guys, it's look out. You got another name in the mix that obviously Oklahoma feels good about and has felt good about, and is making a move to try and get him somewhere that's a little bit more suitable to getting him on the field. And straight out of Dasan's mouth, he says, look, this feels more comfortable for me. Maybe Cheetah never really totally felt comfortable.
And it's tough, to get out there and have to play in coverage and guarding slot wide receivers and things like that. That's a difficult role. I'll admit, I sat here on this show a year ago talking about how I thought he would be a really, really good fit at Cheetah because of his pass rushing skills and his size and length and athleticism. And, maybe the injuries had something to do with it, but it never really materialized last year. But again, a lot of times, guys' first year as a starter in Brent Venables' defense, it's up and down. And the same could be said for him at linebacker. I mean, linebacker depth is crazy good. You've got Danny, you've got Kip, you got Jaron, you got Kobe, you got Dasan, and then you've got all those guys in the 2023 signing class that we haven't really even seen yet in Lewis Carter and Samuel Omasigo and Phil Picciotti. So there's a whole slew of ways that Oklahoma could go. Sounds like Sam Omasigo is getting opportunities to play some Cheetah, where his athleticism and his ability to play in space is going to have a chance to show off a little bit. Lewis Carter, I'm not sure if we've heard yet exactly where he's going to fit in, at what position he'll play linebacker, but that's just a football player that you want to get on the field somehow, some way. But the great news is you don't have to rush anybody out on the field, and you're not going to have to overexpose anybody like what happened in 2022 when Deshaun White and David Agwebu and Danny Stutzman all played over 900 snaps, and Danny Stutzman nearly played 1,000 snaps that season. So you're not going to have to overextend anybody. You're going to be able to keep everybody fresh, because, I mean, you almost have like hockey lines worth of linebackers where you can just roll line after line after line, and everybody's going to be able to stay fresh, especially a guy like Danny Stutzman. When you get to that fourth quarter, you get into crunch time, you're going to be able to have your best players on the field because that depth is so good.
Yeah, it's fun to think about the possibilities of where maybe some of this could shape up. I mean, outside of Danny Stutzman, is anything else really locked up at backer in your mind?
I don't think so. I think it's one of the intriguing position battles to watch, and not in a way like offensive line where you have no idea how it's all going to formulate. You know that, okay, you got this group of like 6 or 7 linebackers, 8 linebackers that you feel great about, and whoever ends up making their way onto the football field, is going to have earned it. They're not going to be just out there because you don't have anybody else. I mean, they're going to have to go through a big time position battle to get those snaps. Speaking of guys that are going to have to get snaps, I mean, who is going to have to be better in 2024 for the Oklahoma Sooners to be better and to be SEC contenders? We'll discuss next, coming up on Locked On Sooners.
Bracket busted, but you want to stay in the game? Introducing Bettor Together. It's the first cooperative daily fantasy platform where teamwork, it triumphs talent, and you can play with your friends, not against them. Pick more or less on real-time player stats, strategize with your partner to boost your odds, and climb that leaderboard together. So grab a friend, and join the social DFS movement. Download Bettor Together now from the App Store and sign up using promo code LOCKEDON for a chance to win your share of over $1,000 in cash prizes. Play with us in a contest on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And remember the code Locked On, because winning alone is fun, but it's better together. And this episode brought to you by the Spring Cleaning Champions. That's Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpets and the drapes with the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Clear out that winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like the springtime flowers. Embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our special offer. Go to manscaped.com. Use code LOCKEDON for 20% off plus free shipping. And Manscaped, it doesn't just apply to the nether regions. Get the full grooming experience with Manscaped's signature Beard Hedger Pro Kit plus Handyman Electric Face Shaver. Get 20% off, free shipping with the code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. Nothing like a little spring cleaning.
Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Josh, this segment is brought to you by Ethan Downs and the K-Ref Army. Ethan Downs appeared on the Ref on Thursday and talked about how maybe he needed to be better in 2024 than what he was in 2023. He was solid. He was good. You know, he had he did a good job as a run defender, added a little bit as a pass rusher, led the team in sacks, and just kind of provided a little bit of a boost in leadership as well. But for this team to take another step, I mean, admittedly so, he's going to have to continue to be better. But who else defensively, offensively has to be better than what they were in 2023 for this team to go contend for an SEC title, make the college football playoff?
A number of guys. And I mean, development, you think about offensive line, obviously, but I could probably toss a bunch of names at you from the defensive side of the football that aren't named Ethan Downs. Just real quick on Ethan's remarks. He felt genuinely that, you know, going back, watching the tape, evaluating, he was eligible to get his NFL draft grade for the first time. And that was sort of the light bulb moment of, I got to be better. I got to be a lot better. And, you know, look, wherever that motivation, wherever you draw it from, I think it's fine. And that's not to say that the NFL draft was the only motivator for Ethan Downs. He went on it. It was a great interview with, myself and Plank, and you could go find that kref.com and just search around up top for the podcast link. But, he's fired up, of course, about Danny Stutzman coming back, Billy Bowman, Woody Washington. But in that self-introspection component, it was the NFL draft grade that told him, look, I've got to get better. And he sees that and he recognizes that. And he's already been good, John. He hasn't been great. He's not been great. And I think that's why he probably got the grade back that maybe he didn't want to have to see, but he saw. He's been productive in the fact that he's had TFLs, he's had sacks, but he hasn't really necessarily on a consistent basis been that game-breaking defensive lineman. And in order for him to kind of get where he maybe wants to go individually, that's the step to get to, John.
I think so. And I think he's capable. I mean, he's a hard worker and he shows enough pass rush productivity that you feel like he can start getting to the quarterback a little bit more frequently. Some of the sack numbers a lot of times are just based on scheme and quarterbacks that you're facing are getting the ball out faster. Some of it is just the defender needs to be able to get home a little bit more often. And that was an issue for everybody on Oklahoma's roster and the defensive line last year. But I think it can grow and they can continue to get better. I mean, this is now his fourth season with the Sooners. It seems like he's been around forever now, but he's gotten a little bit better each and every year. Now, this is the year that he and several others needed to kind of take that significant step. Sticking on the defensive side of the ball, I think Peyton Bowen not that he was bad necessarily, but you've got a lot of safety snaps that you've got to make up for with the loss of Key Lawrence to Ole Miss and Reggie Pearson to eligibility, maybe pro football. So you got Billy Bowman. Okay, who's going to take all those snaps next to him? Well, we assume it's going to be Peyton Bowen starting. Robert Spears Jennings is just as capable as well. But if you're going to take that defense that was really, really opportunistic last year and take that and step it up, Peyton Bowen's got to be a big part of that. He had several opportunities to nab interceptions last year, and the ball just bounced off his hands. So can he go and be better and take advantage of those opportunities when the ball is coming his way? We've seen that he's a guy that has a nose for the football on the block punts, on the pass deflections. Now it's about, okay, turning those pass deflections into interceptions, much like a Billy Bowman, and making those game-changing plays for the Sooners defense.
Agreed. We've seen the athleticism, and now it's about putting the puzzle pieces together from an experience and intelligence standpoint. Not to say that Peyton Bowen is unintelligent, just saying that, okay, well, now you've got the experience on the football field of having played and started some games at this level, and you've got that IQ that you've picked up along the way from having done it. So now just go let the athleticism shine. Trust that the IQ is right and what you're seeing is right, and go make plays. Yes, that ceiling is really, really high. And for Oklahoma to be what everybody wants Oklahoma to be, he needs to go match a Billy Bowman or come near it, right? Gentry Williams, I would put in similar sort of category there. The big thing for him, of course, is just stay healthy. Can he put together a season where he stays healthy? And then I would think interior defensive line for Oklahoma. I mean, we talk about Ethan Downs as one of those guys on the perimeter, but Dejon Terry, can you elevate your game a little bit? Grayson Halton, we've talked a lot about. Is that a name that turns a corner? And Ashton Sanders, is he somebody that all of a sudden we look up and say, oh, okay, well, that's the defensive tackle that we've been waiting on. And I would look at a couple of other guys along the edge for Oklahoma. If we're, talking defensive line, it's time for PJ Adebaware. If we're saying that about Peyton Bowen, PJ hasn't had quite the same type number of snaps, but it's time for PJ to go sort of morph into that 5-star guy. R. Mason Thomas is somebody that we've seen do some good things. Okay, well, now it's time to be a full-time rotational piece and somebody that on a regular basis is living in defensive backfields and doesn't make a mistake setting and containing the edge. So those would be guys defensively you're looking at. Offensively, I mean, offensive line is an easy area. Tight end, right? Quarterback. I mean, but you almost feel unfair saying that about Jackson Arnold because he played so little.
Right. And if I'm going to go with a name that was a big time, contributor last year, had a big role that needs to be better this year, it's Jalil Farouk. And I'm very much on the Jalil Farouk train. I got all the stock. Me and George Stoya of Sooner Scoop, we got all the stock on Jalil Farouk. While everybody else is selling, we're buying it all up. He's a productive player. The fumbles, yeah, it's a problem. Some of the drops, you hate it. But those are such a small percentage of plays for a guy that plays wide receiver and plays a ton of snaps for you and does a lot of different things in your offense that you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's frustrating, yeah, and it's disappointing to see those negative plays happen. But you go back and you watch that Texas game, you may not win that game without Jalil Farouk and the way he played that game. Now it's just a matter of him playing that kind of a game more consistently, being a big time playmaker, making the tough catch. We've seen it, go back to the Texas Tech game, or the Oregon game, different times where he's had big plays after the catch because he's such a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. I go back even to the Tulsa game in non-conference where he had the big kick return and then he fumbled the ball at the end of it. So if he just can eliminate those negatives and create more consistency with the positives, then I think he's going to have a fantastic season. And we don't know what Andrew Anthony's availability is going to be like come the fall. Who knows? I mean, the knee injury, knee surgeries, that stuff, there's no like specific timetable on it. There's a general one, but it's going to be different for every player. But if he's not quite ready, I mean, you're going to have to rely on Jalil Farouk to be that veteran guy every single game. And I think he's got the capability of having another big year where he's got 800 yards, maybe 1,000 total yards, and ups his touchdown total for you. But that's a dude that if he can be better, it's going to help everything else be better, because what we saw in the bowl game, Seth Luttrell, he's very much a fan of that RPO game. And who is really, really good at running that slant and going over the middle? Well, that's Jalil Farouk. So again, cut down on the negatives, get more consistent with the positives. And I think that will help this offense be better than what it was in 2023, which I think it's going to be. Speaking of things that could be better, hey, the defensive tackle depth chart might be getting a little bit better coming up. But we got so much to discuss here. Coming up next on Locked On Sooners. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These guys were able to take it to the next level. The NC State Wolfpack are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in their first two games in the tournament. Wins over Texas Tech and Oakland had them set up to play Marquette in the Sweet 16. They say win life, go Rogue, and that's exactly what the Wolfpack have done here. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, and Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So defensive tackle depth took a bit of a hit with Jacob Lacey's medical retirement. The Oklahoma Sooners are in process and on the trail trying to land a little bit more defensive tackle depth, because you go back and you look at the snap counts, there's only one defensive tackle on the roster that played more than 100 snaps for the Sooners in 2023, and that's Dejon Terry. Grayson Halton played a little bit, but didn't play a lot. So Oklahoma is pursuing Philip Bildi, the Indiana defensive tackle, also spent 3 years at Texas Tech before transferring to the Hoosiers. According to Pro Football Focus, he was the third highest graded defender on that Hoosiers team. Now, Indiana was not a great team last year. I think they finished 3-9. Their defense was not super good, but this is a guy that provides something as a run stuffing interior defensive lineman. And he just looks like a tough player when you kind of go back and watch him a little bit. So an intriguing pursuit. It seems like this could be a definite need for Oklahoma, because we don't know what that defensive tackle spot looks like. And you don't want to go into a season relying on true freshmen to have breakout years in year one without a little bit of insurance from the transfer portal.
Well, really, with the news of Jacob Lacey, if you can bring in a Philip Bildi to essentially take over that type of role next to Dejon Terry, you'll feel better about where you're at, because look, you just don't have a lot of guys that have a ton of D1 Power 5 collegiate snaps under their belt. Bildi does, and he was the third highest graded player on Indiana's defense per Pro Football Focus, which again, grain of salt with the PFF for some folks out there. But here's somebody that is a definite defensive tackle helper for OU, and how much of a help would remain to be seen. But I think just given the situation that Oklahoma's in, he could be a big help for OU alongside Dejon Terry and others. You're counting on names like Grayson Halton, Ashton Sanders, Marcus Strong, obviously the two rooks in David Stone and Jaden Jackson. But if you add Bildi into that equation, then I think everybody overnight feels more comfortable just from an experience standpoint.
Yeah, and are there other areas, with the spring portal session that's going to come up after the spring game, are there other areas that you feel like Oklahoma should look to add more talent?
If the right offensive lineman popped up again, I think you'd consider it again there. Wide receiver, I feel like you're good. Running back, you're good. Quarterback, you're obviously not looking there. Tight end, you've already taken multiple, so I think you're probably done at tight end. So, probably thinking offensive line and maybe maybe a safety if the right safety popped up, somebody that can help you at cheetah maybe and at safety a little bit. That might be a piece that you would look at.
Yeah, safety makes a little bit of sense to me too, because you've got Billy Bowman, you got Peyton Bowen, you got Robert Spears Jennings, but beyond that, you don't have a whole lot of experience. And we've seen this team want to rotate, 4, sometimes 5 safeties out there to give everybody playing time, keep everybody fresh. You don't have veteran experience beyond Billy Bowman. Now he's going into his 4th year with the Sooners. So that's a lot of experience that Billy Bowman has. He's kind of one of your veterans on the defense now, all of a sudden. It's crazy how college football goes. It was just a few years ago. He was coming in as a true freshman in 2021 and just kind of playing all over Alex Grinch's defense. But yeah, I think offensive line, safety, even if you didn't take a safety, I feel like you'd be okay there. But offensive line, you could never have enough offensive linemen in your arsenal because as we're kind of seeing right now with Troy Everett, who went down in practice just a couple of days ago, it can throw some things up in the air. And that's something we haven't really even talked about yet, is the Troy Everett injury, mostly because there's not really any definitive news on what the injury is or what his potential timeline could look like. But even just being out for spring ball, that definitely puts a bit of a dent in your offensive line cohesion and chemistry, because if this is a guy that was expected to start for you and now you don't have that, okay, but you're expecting him to come back for fall camp and be ready to roll and be your starter. Well, again, that's going to create a little bit of discohesion, I guess is the best way to put it, especially between your center and your quarterback. That's a very important chemistry that needs to be involved. And if he's not available for spring ball, it definitely brings center to the forefront of the position battles.
Well, I always kind of thought in general that center was an intriguing battle to begin with. I mean, anything on the offensive line, the way things are shaping up right now is important, and we don't know a ton about it, but center between Everett and Joshua Bates, and now Isosa, from day one has been working at center. I mean, nothing would shock me there. Troy Everett would have obviously been, and probably still is, the most likely candidate to start at center because we saw him play for Oklahoma a season ago, legitimate starting snaps, right? Extended snaps for Oklahoma. So he's the clubhouse leader, no doubt. And a lot of times in the spring, not altogether serious, winds up being, hey, let's just sit him down. Now it could be really serious too with Everett. I'm not saying one way or the other. I really don't know yet. But I don't think you freak out about it though either, just because generally speaking, you're probably going to be more cautious, and especially so with somebody that is older than, say, an Isosa or a Bates.
Yeah, for sure. And right now on the offensive line, it's looking like, okay, you got Jacob Sexton at left tackle, Heath Ozida, friend of the show, Heath Ozida at left guard. And then that center position, it could be a little bit up in the air now, depending on Everett's injury. And then at right guard, Fabici Wiwu. And then right tackle, you're seeing some Jake Taylor. We've seen reports of Spencer Brown and Michael Tarkin getting snaps at those tackle spots too. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Jake Taylor that takes that spot, which would give you kind of a young offensive line, with Sexton and with Ozida and with Taylor, 3 of your 5 starters, which is really, really intriguing for the future for the Oklahoma Sooners offensive line. We'll continue to follow all the spring storylines here on Locked On Sooners. So make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Go rate and review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you like to download and listen to podcasts. Go give us a 5-star rating. We'd really, really appreciate that. That'd be fantastic for us. Go subscribe to the show over on YouTube as well, and hit those like and notification buttons to let you know when new episodes drop and to let others know that you enjoy the content we produce here on Locked On Sooners. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh. I'm John. Boomer Sooner.